Hey folks, how you guys doing? Hope you're all having a great day today. This is a quick win little project for two reasons. Number one, to just get a quick win project. And number two, Thomas, the apprentice shop apprentice guy, is behind the camera, giving him some practice behind the camera, and also we'll edit this one together and all that fun stuff. So I'm gonna make a dry erase board. Very simple construction, basically 4 pieces plus a shelf. That's 5 pieces plus a back, that's 6 pieces. And should be something I can knock out in a couple hours. This is the material that we're using for the dry erase board. It's a peel and stick film, and I think it is PVC based. I've had good results with this. I wanted to use it a few times before I gave a recommendation. And you can pick this up on Amazon. That's where I got this. So I've used it on 2 dry erase boards already. One that is for my daughter. So we communicate with our nanny with this dry erase board back and forth with just random notes. It gets used all the time, and because it's frequently used, it's super easy to erase. It comes with 4 markers and a little there's one of the markers. It comes with 4 markers with a little erase tip on the end, and this is good enough to erase it really, really well. Here in the shop, I also made another one of these dry erase boards, and I don't use it as frequently, so the markers really, really dry out on it, and it's a huge pain in the butt to remove the marker. So keep that in mind. I don't know if that's with all dry erase boards, maybe it is, I'm not sure. But if you really let them dry, you're gonna have to spray some type of water, let it soak in, let it absorb a little bit before you actually try and remove it. So now let's get started on actually milling some lumber. This is ash, and I've got a lot of this stuff that is nice, tight, straight grain. This is gonna produce a really consistent look all the way around the frame. Before I can mill the lumber though, I do want to get some of this stuff down to a panel, so I have the final dimensions of the panel that I could use to size the actual frame. I've done this backwards where I made the frame first and then the panel actually wasn't large enough. I've made that mistake, so I don't want to do that again. Panel first, then the frame. This stuff obviously comes in a roll, so you can make it as long as you want. Basically, I'm going to set the fence to the width here, which is 17.5 inches. And then this is 30.5 inches long, so I'm going to keep it at 30.5 and then make this 17.5 long. So that's going to be the size of our frame. And I'm probably going to leave it in the horizontal orientation rather than this being vertical. The most important thing I found when working with this stuff is to make sure there's no dust on the surface, because any little dust that's on the surface when you stick this down is stuck there forever, and it'll be a little bump inside the dry erase board, which is really annoying. Alright, it's going to be pretty much impossible to see, but there are some scratches here in this film. I guess I scratched this the last time I used it. So this section over here, about as wide as my hand, I'm going to actually cut this off real quick because that's not, I don't like the way that looks. So I was going for the maximum panel size there, but this is going to make me go a little bit shorter. To determine how long these pieces need to be, I'm going to do all the measuring with the pieces rather than a tape measure. So I know that this is a nice clean 90-degree cut. This piece is going to be a half lap joint, so it will end right about, let me get this lined up, it'll end right about there, so I can strike a line. I know that I want a 3/8 of an inch rabbet on the inside of the frame, so I can use a 3/8 of an inch spacer block. Strike a line. Now I can line my panel up with the inside of that rabbet line. Coming over here, I can see that, let's get this parallel. On this side, this is where I want the rabbet to end. And again, we're using a 3/8 of an inch setup bar to determine where the rabbet will start. And then this piece over here will be on a half lap. So if I line this up real quick, that's how long the long pieces need to be made. So cut on that side of the line. I'll do the same thing for the short pieces. All right, I've taken the time to dial in my setup here, and basically I have the fence set so that it is just a little bit more away from this side of the blade than the width of the material. And whatever you can feel on this side of the teeth over here, that's how much stick out is going to be on the opposite side of the joint when it's assembled. And I want just a little bit so I can trim that flush. I've also taken the time to raise the blade and set it at a height where two test pieces can be put together, and you clamp this joint together by hand, and you have a nice seamless transition. So now I'm set up to make half lap joints. One thing to note is with this miter gauge, typically you do not want to use a miter gauge with the fence when you have nothing supporting the waste material on this side. So if this side of the fence on the miter gauge was this far away from the blade, and you drop a piece of waste over here and it gets trapped in between the blade and the fence, that's going to shoot back. That's not good. In this case, we have two things going on. Number one, if we are cutting offcuts over here, this miter gauge is going to support that offcut and push it all the way through, but we're not making offcuts. All we're going to do is push our material through and nibble it all the way down to the end of the board, so the end of the board touches the fence. And at this point, you're just simply pushing and pulling the material back and forth, referencing over here as a distance. There is no waste material down here that's going to be in danger. So we're all set up. Now we can cut the ends of all of our boards. All right, all of the joints are fitting as they should, and half lap joints are really strong, really easy to do. There's not much at all to them, so let's go ahead and glue this together. While we wait for the glue to dry on the frame, I've got another scrap piece here that has a crack in it. I milled this up for a previous project. I don't need all of this though. I can go below the crack, and all of this down here is actually kind of figured. It's got some nice curl in it. So I'm gonna mill this section out and use it as a tray for down here at the bottom of the mirror. So this is the board, and I don't know if you can see, but the grain actually tapers off quite a bit. This is not a nice straight grain piece like the rest of the project. So I found something that resembles the size that I want for this little shelf, and I traced it here, and it's not going to be as long. This is what, 20 inches, so it's not going to be as long as the entire frame is, but that's going to be plenty long enough for a shelf. And then if I cut this on an angle at the bandsaw and then refine from there, the resulting grain inside here is much more straight. It's not perfect, but it is much more straight compared to just slicing it off of this end. In the router table, I have a 1/2 inch diameter round nose bit, and this will just create a nice cove inside the tray for markers. I'm doing a little bit of work for Bits and Bits, some advertising work, so if you want to save 15% off good quality router bits, then go to bitsbits.com and use the promo code JBates. It'll save you 15%. But this will be for the markers, so I'll make one pass with this up against the fence like so, move the fence back just a little bit and make another pass somewhere over here, and it'll be a nice little tray to put markers on. The glue is dry on the frame, and I want to pin the joints here, not to add a tremendous amount of strength because I don't think it's necessary, but this is mainly for cosmetic reasons. You can pin half-lap joints to add strength, but I'm just going to do it because I think it'll look cool. So this is a canvas phenolic rod. This is the natural brown canvas phenolic, and I'm basically experimenting here with this one because on my last project that I made, a jewelry cabinet, I used this color, which is double black linen phenolic, if I'm not mistaken, and it turned out really, really good. This natural canvas phenolic is going to look a little bit differently than that black, not stand out as much, but I think because the canvas is a little bit more visible on this particular stock, I think it's going to look pretty interesting. And I'm also going to go with a really small dowel here. This is, if I'm not mistaken, 1/8 of an inch. So I need to drill out some nice precise holes at the drill press. But before I can do that, I need this top face to be nice and perfect all the way across so it registers on the drill press fence, which means I need to knock these edges off, and we'll do that real quick and easy at the belt sander. Cut. This is the rabbiting bit that I'm going to use, and it's a 3/8 of an inch rabbiting bit, meaning there's 3/8 of an inch from the end of this bearing, or the surface of this bearing, to the end of this cutting edge. So that's 3/8 of an inch. And of course, how deep you put this into the router table, or how high you set this in the router table, determines the other dimension of the rabbet. This is a good look at the Astra coating that Bits and Bits puts on their router bits. This Astra coating, this darker look that you see, reduces friction, reduces heat buildup, and prolongs the life of the bit. So for just a few dollars more, you get a much longer life out of the bit. In this case, I'm using the panel material to set the height of the bit, and I actually want it a little bit more than the thickness of this. The exact dimension isn't critical, but I do want this panel to be sticking into the frame with enough meat around the end of the frame so I can use hot glue to secure this to the frame. To prevent tear out on the inside of the frame, I'm making a slight climb cut first, very controlled. I've got a nice grip on the frame, and then after the climb cut is done, I'll do a full depth forward pass to remove the rest of the material. We just cut two 4-inch long keyhole slots on the backside. There's many different ways to hang this thing, but if you use a keyhole slot, this will mount flush up against the wall. If you use like one of those sawtooth brackets or sawtooth hangers, it's going to hang out from the wall or stick out from the wall just a little bit. So I prefer this particular method. Now the placement on the back really doesn't matter if you're going with a horizontal slot, and I'm using two. That way this isn't going to want to rock one way or the other if it's just in the middle as you interact with it and write with it. So that's the back side. Those are good to go. Also, if I had a different clamping method on the CNC machine, I still haven't done the spoil board and got all that situated. If I had a better clamping method or clamping situation, I would have clamped it right here so that the keyhole slots could go all the way to the end. But that's not that big of a deal. So this is the back side. On the front side, everything is nice and sanded, good to go. These are looking really, really nice, these dowels. And on the bottom side over here, we're just going to glue and maybe screw through the bottom of it. I'm not exactly sure. Glue should be strong enough just as is, but I may screw through the bottom too, I'm not sure. But we're gonna go ahead and before we do that, put some shellac on it. No, actually, we are gonna get this done before the shellac. That way we're not gluing to shellac. So, glue this on, spray everything with shellac, put the back in and call it done. Once the finish is dried, I can put the back panel in place. And like I said, I'm just gonna secure this with some hot melt glue, some hot glue. All right, so this was a really easy one-day build, a nice quick win project. So if you're looking for something that you can knock out in an afternoon and have something that looks pretty cool, something that's actually very functional, then consider making one of these. I'll have a link to the panel that I used, or not the panel, the adhesive back stuff that I put on this panel for the dry erase board. So let's bring it in closer and look at some of the details. The dowels actually turned out really, really well. The canvas phenolic, and I like the way that this is a little bit more subtle than the black dowels I used on the last project. The black has a lot more contrast, which if you're going for that, looks really good. In this case though, I really like how subtle those are. It almost looks like an end grain piece of wood, to be honest with you. So also the dry erase, if you draw within like a day or so, it's really easy to erase. But as I said earlier, if you let it sit on there for a long time, it's going to be a pain in the butt to get off. And of course, this tray down here is handy for the markers. That's it for this project. If you want all of the dimensions, they'll be in the website article for this video. A link to that is in the description below. And if you want to stay up to date with everything that I publish, then sign up for my email newsletter. Go to jayscustomcreations.com/newsletter, and from there you can sign up to be notified of everything that I publish, because I publish a lot more stuff on my website that is woodworking related, more so than here on this main YouTube channel. That's it for this one. You guys take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.